Irish guy. Alright, Premier League Gameweek 3. Let's see what happened in the Premier League this weekend. Although, honestly, I know what happened. And it's ridiculous. Right, let's go. Newcastle 1, Liverpool 2. Disgrace. Absolute disgrace. How? No, I'm not asking a question. I'm just telling you who is to blame for this horror show embarrassment. Listen, Eddie Howe has done a miraculous job at Newcastle United. I don't think there's been a better manager in the Premier League over the last 18 months than Eddie Howe. But I'm sorry, he deserves the blame for this result because everyone in that Newcastle camp lost their heads on Sunday afternoon. Newcastle haven't beaten Liverpool in nearly 8 years. December 2015 is the only time Jurgen Klopp has ever tasted defeat against Newcastle. So the fact he has managed to leave St. James's Park with 3 points this time out, it's just awful, horrible. How? Klopp said it himself that as a coach, in 1,000 matches that he's managed, he has never experienced anything like this. He said this was even more of a mammoth win than beating Barcelona in the Champions League. For years, Liverpool fans have been squabbling with Man United fans, arguing over who had the more miraculous Champions League final win. Well, this was exactly like Man United's smash and grab win over Bayern Munich in 1999. Newcastle were brilliant in that first half. All over Liverpool like an eczema rash. Anthony Gordon looked like a man possessed, terrorizing Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was a battle between two scousers. Normally you'd assume that would involve throwing punches inside a pub and boodle, with both blokes arguing over who has the ugliest nan. But no, Gordon was destroying Trent. Newcastle go 1-0 up, and then Virgil van Dijk is sent off for a last man foul on Alexander Isak 3 minutes later. Cue the Liverpool meltdown, right? I mean, Newcastle scored 5 in their last home match. I was thinking they were now going to roast Liverpool like a marshmallow, that it was going to be an easy 3-0 win. This was a controlled Newcastle performance for an hour, and then Eddie drags Anthony Gordon off the park. The man of the match, by the way, replacing him with Harvey Barnes, someone who then proceeded to play the final 20 minutes of the match like a neutered cat. Whatever about replacing Isak with Callum Wilson, that was fine. But to also take off Sandro Tonali and replace him with Sean Longstaff? I'm sorry, what? I can only assume that the Italian was still suffering from food poisoning after his moldy chicken nuggets at Wetherspoons. Because in what other world are you taking him off for a Geordie Garden gnome? It gets worse. This is a strong Newcastle 11 featuring internationals in nearly every position. But Newcastle finished the game with the likes of Matt Target, Dan Byrne, Sean Longstaff, Elliot Anderson, and Harvey Barnes on the pitch. So are we really that confused that the entire team folded like a tent made of straw? Newcastle let Liverpool out of jail. Christ, well, they finished the final quarter of the match with the centre-back pairing of Joe Gomez and Jarrell Kwanzaa. The last one sounds like a Pokemon. Don't you tell me the Reds weren't there for the taking. But Liverpool bring on Darwin Nunez, and he scores the same goal twice on the corner of the box, shooting across Nick Pope and into the bottom right-hand corner. He did that twice. This was a miracle Liverpool win. For Newcastle to play over an hour against Liverpool with a 1-goal advantage and a 1-man advantage, to come off that pitch with 0 points, it was a horrible disgrace. This is supposed to be a European level unit now. They've got that Champions League badge on their arm, and yet they almost handed Liverpool the 3 points. Were they intimidated? Honestly, Eddie! Yes, I know I sound like that monster from those awful Venom films. He wasn't so much a monster as he was Tom Hardy's boyfriend, but I'm sorry, how you have messed this up. Midway through that second half, Newcastle froze. They didn't know what to do. They were scared because they knew they couldn't not win against 10 men, right? They played with fear. That is not Newcastle United under Eddie Howe. They didn't know whether to attack or to sit. Jason Tindall was probably feeling very, very nervous after he was caught on camera shushing Jurgen Klopp at 1-0 up. I mean, fair enough. Klopp's a Champions League winning manager? Tyndall fetches Eddie Howe his muffins in the morning. They didn't know whether to attack or to sit back. And in the end, they just lose the game against 10 men, which is a bit like losing a boxing fight to someone in a wheelchair. Arsenal 2, Fulham 2. Arsenal are sloppy. Very, very sloppy. Sloppier than a 91-year-old grandmother trying to eat lasagna with a spoon. Sloppier than a panda bear trying to eat cheese out of a pencil case. I said that the Gunners would slip out of the top 4 this season. And honestly, judging by the reaction in the comments, you'd swear that I just predicted I would find an alien in my fridge. Yeah, nah, it's just a bowl of ice cream that Santa gave me when I was 10. But lads, so far this season, Arsenal have been grisly. Just unconvincing 1-goal wins over Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace, and now failing to beat 10-man Fulham, allowing Andres Pereira to silence the crowd with a scuffed lob after just 57 seconds of the match. Honestly, as soon as that goal went in, poor old Aaron Ramsdale. He knows that his rival, the man sent to destroy his life, the Spanish Terminator, is literally sitting in the stands, munching on a cheese sandwich and smirking whenever the English English goalie messes up. On Saturday afternoon, Ramsdale failed to keep a clean sheet for even a minute. This was the equivalent to an under-pressure chef knowing full well that there's health and safety inspectors waiting for their food. He accidentally cooks a worm into a fancy smoked salmon quiche. Yeah, you're probably going to lose your job. Arsenal were losing against Fulham for over an hour, but they turned it around, went 2-1 up, and going into the final 10 minutes, Calvin Bassey then shows the footballing IQ of Shirley Bassey and gets stupidly sent off in his debut. And yet Arsenal still nearly lose the match. João Palhinha scuffs in a volley from a corner kick, and then in the final minute, Adama Traore races 40 yards up the pitch to nearly score a Fulham winner. Yes, Adama Traore, the man who looks like he injects cow steroids into his bum. He says he never even goes to the gym. Oh, I'm sorry, did he get those biceps from just carrying around shopping bags in Tesco? If he really doesn't go to the gym, then I can only assume that he just bench presses crocodiles from the safety of his kitchen. Anyway, despite having the end product of melted Milky Ways, he nearly scrambled in a sensational last-minute winner. Can you imagine the Arsenal fans in the car park if they'd lost that match? They'd be so angry, they'd probably start to resemble the cast of I Am Legend. Everton 0, Wolves 1. Just play the clip.
Oh. No, not again, not again. It's so milky.
I hate you, Jose Sa. Bournemouth 0, Tottenham 2. Tottenham are tasty. How many more times do I have to say this? Ange Postecoglou is probably the least talked up manager in Premier League history. The amount of people who slept on this man, purely because he looks like a hairy ogre and came from the Scottish Premier League. And yeah, his breath probably does smell like a dead Viking. Nobody was really captivated by the arrival of the former manager of Panachaiki, Whittlesea Zebras and Brisbane Roar. I mean, it's a bit like your mum bringing home your new stepdad when you're 10. You're hoping it'll be someone cool like Arnold Schwarzenegger off Jingle All the Way. In the end, it's just some bloke who looks like Hans Mullman, who works at the post office, and whose hands are always dripping with wee. But to be fair, I love the way Postecoglou plays football. And I actually think that the Tottenham fans are the most refreshed supporters in the entire division. This is not a club who wins anything, but it is a club who've always played exciting football and scored wacky goals. Christ above, the last time this team won a trophy, they started that campaign with Dimitar Berbatov, Robbie Keane, Darren Bent, and Jermaine Defoe. I mean, lads, if Berbatov had just scored 6 more goals, then all 4 strikers would be in the 100 goal Premier League club. That tells you everything you need to know about the history of Spurs. And here they were slick, zesty, tasty. James Maddison absolutely pulling strings in the Tottenham midfield. And lads, I've picked on Yves Bissouma for years. I never saw the hype at Brighton, but to be fair, he had started this season playing like a prime Toni Kroos. This was a juicy match because Bournemouth, under Andoni Iraola, are also a new look, free-flowing, attractive team starting a new project. And they did have their chances to score. Philip Billing nearly banging in 1. And I'm sorry, but my biggest pet peeve in football is players putting their first name on the back of their shirts. Why in a donkey's left eyeball is this bloke allowed to just call himself Philip? I mean, does he think that makes him look cool? One name? One name? Like he's the Danish Stormzy? I think if the mess at ITV has told us anything, and it's not really fashionable to be called Philip right now. Burnley 1, Aston Villa 3. I'm worried. I am worried for Burnley and Vincent Kompany. There is supposed to be a buzz about Burnley now. And you look Burnley, who actually look pretty now. They've had their prom queen makeover. No longer are they this rugged, oafish Sean Dyche unit. A football team that looks about as appetizing as a toilet bowl filled with slugs. But so far, they've begun the season with 2 games at Turf Moor and 0 points, 1 goal scored, and conceded 6. Look, you can make your peace with Manchester City, eating them like a bowl of scrambled eggs. But Aston Villa? Letting Matty Cash, their non-scoring posh right back, score 2 inside the first 20 minutes of the match. He spent over an hour looking for his hat-trick. I mean, lads, the previous day, I'd actually watched A Day in the Life of Matty Cash, and it was about as entertaining as watching Bugs Bunny combing the poo out of his tail. I mean, he seems nice enough, but he's got about as much personality as R2-D2. I hear he was probably able to score twice. Lyle Foster banged in a second-half goal to give Burnley hope, but Moussa Diaby then quickly made it 3-1. By the way, Diaby, I have to say, in the opening weeks of the season, looks the real deal. Everything Leon Bailey was supposed to be. Honestly, get him into your fantasy league team now. But if I'm company, I am nervous. This man who I think has had his confidence as a manager knocked because he's done away with his number 10, thrown the idea of having a playmaker in the bin in favor of a more rigid, reserved 4-4-2. This is supposed to be the next Manchester City manager, and yet he's setting up his team as if it was 2006. Sheffield United 1, Man City 2. Minutes. This was literally 5 minutes away from being an absolutely mega result that would have sent shockwaves across Europe. Lads, I think everybody had Sheffield United down to be a hideous freak show of a team this season. But here, they made Erling Haaland look like a Norwegian Carlton Cole. This was the worst game of his Manchester City career ever. He missed the first half penalty, then sort of froze in front of goal after that, missing 3 gilt-edged chances. I know he just linked up with KSI and Logan Paul in a business deal this week, but I'm sorry, what was in that bottle of Prime? Was it secretly just a bottle filled with poisonous skin cream? If you looked at the ingredients on the back, did it also say bird vomit? Because this was not the Ballon d'Or superstar we all know and love. I know he eventually scored with a header after 63 minutes, but no! Lads, for some reason, Man City struggle against the Blades. Pep Guardiola must hate Sheffield United. Before this match, the last 3 Premier League meetings were narrow 1-0 City wins. Before that was a scrappy late 2-0 home win over Sheffield United in December 2019. Before that was a 1-0 City win in December 2006. And before that was a horrible 0-0 draw at the Etihad. That is the history of Manchester City versus Sheffield United in the Premier League. The aggregate score across 7 games is Manchester City 8, Sheffield United 1. These fixtures are horrible. This was a narrow 2-1 win, yes, and yet it's the highest scoring Prem fixture between these two monsters. They were coasting towards another ugly 1-0 City win before Jayden Bogle made things interesting by rifling an equaliser in 85 minutes, and then Rodri just spanks in an 88th minute volley. What a finale, yes! Well lads, usually Sheffield United versus Manchester City, it's usually a bit like watching any Transformers film. Boring! Man United 3, Nottingham Forest 2. Oh, Man United, Man United, Man United. This was so nearly an absolute meltdown. This was the quickest Manchester United ever fell 2 goals behind in a Premier League match ever. This was the worst ever start to a Premier League game. Firstly, Taiwo Awoniyi sprints half the length of the pitch to stick Andre Onana on his bum and tap in the opening goal after 2 minutes. For a former Liverpool striker, he'll have enjoyed that one. Although, considering there's a 6-foot beefcake built like a fridge, did anybody know he was that fast? The bloke was outpacing Marcus Rashford. But how? He looks like he probably eats actual sheep for tea. How is he this fast? That was now the 7th consecutive Premier League game in which he scored. Whisper it quietly, but he's secretly hunting down Jamie Vardy's record of 11. If he scores at Stamford Bridge next week, then he will be tied on 3rd with Daniel Sturridge, who scored in 8 games on the bounce a decade ago. I'm gonna say this. He was on Liverpool's books for 6 years. Are there any Liverpool fans who are regretting letting him go? The genuine question, because right now, the run he's on, it's spectacular. It's like watching peak Christian Benteke. And yes, that is a compliment. Not only is it 7 games on the bounce that he scored, but it's actually 9 goals in 7 matches. And not against rubbish baby teams. Oh no, it was against Chelsea, Manchester United, and Arsenal twice. Well done, Taiwo. But yeah, it got worse for Man United because Morgan Gibbs-White swings in a free kick and Willy Bolly heads past Onana for 2-0. 2-0 after 4 minutes. So this is a game which could have gone another way. We have seen Man United collapse after rubbish starts in so many games against Tottenham, Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford. But to be fair, instead of slumping to something hideous and embarrassing like, I don't know, a 4-0 defeat at home to Forest, they rallied. Christian Eriksen and Casemiro scored. Joe Worrell was sent off before Bruno Fernandes fired home a penalty, and yes, it was a penalty. So honestly, I'm not going to sit here and destroy Manchester United for a bad start because who cares? No, the character showed to come back and win all 3 points. Fair play, because you wouldn't have done that under Ollie. Brighton 1, West Ham 3. What was this? Seriously, what happened here? Brighton hove Albion a 78% possession of the ball. They had 25 shots on goal and yet lost 3-1 at home to West Ham. This seems absolutely nutty, but this has happened before, and not too long ago either. People are talking about Roberto De Zerbi as the heir to Pep Guardiola. Please, can we stop? Just shh. Because it was only in May, just 5 games ago, when Brighton had 78% possession of the ball and pretty much the same amount of shots. The stats are almost identical to this weekend, and they lost 5-1 to Everton. De Zerbi is being talked about as a tactical wizard. Well, guess what? These grimy old dinosaurs like Dyche and Moyes have recently turned up to your ground, sat back, barely touched the ball, caught you on the break, and still scored a combined 8 goals. Brighton are slowly being found out. De Zerbi needs to tweak things, because this has happened twice now, either side of the summer break. But I think this is the beginning of the end for Brighton and Hove Albion. I always sense a worrying pattern for these flavor of the month hipster coaches. I'm always on the lookout for their Achilles heel. I mean, another Roberto Martinez this time. Similarly, he liked to play pretty football and dominate possession at Wigan. But I remember him in just 1 season alone, losing 5-0 at home and away to Manchester United. They lost 4-0 to Arsenal, Portsmouth, and Bolton, and actually lost a Premier League match by 8 goals twice. That was all in just 1 Premier League campaign. Yeah, 3 years later, that team were relegated. Their weakness was absolutely getting trashed on a regular basis. So with De Zerbi, if you're a Brighton fan, then you have my permission to panic. Chelsea 3, Luton Town 0. Raheem Sterling is back. I said it. I said that everybody choosing to write him off after just 1 Chelsea season was an absolute buffoon. The man is just 28 years old. People were suddenly thinking that he's now the English Alexis Sanchez. I'm sorry, does Sterling look like someone who eats 5 cheeseburgers for breakfast? No, this man who scored over 130 goals goal for Manchester City. Put some respect on his name. And here, he scores 2 slick goals against Luton, sets up Nicholas Jackson for the 3rd. Brilliant. Sterling has now been directly involved in 17 goals in his last 17 Premier League games against newly promoted clubs. He is not someone you want to be playing in August if you're a Luton full back. This was a controlled, efficient Chelsea performance, beating a team they should be beating. Sounds simple, but they weren't doing this last year. Although honestly, Luton Town's midfield 3 of Tahith Chong, Marvelous Nakamba and Ross Barkley, yeah, 2 of them were wonderkid children in their teens. But really, those 3 are about as intimidating as an episode of the Teletubbies. It was just pretty gruesome. I wouldn't be surprised if Barkley had just given up and was just spotted munching on a pizza by the corner flag. Brentford 1, Crystal Palace 1. Good result for both, I guess. And wonder goal by Joachim Anderson, but pretty meh match. Anyway, that's the interview. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Or let me know in the comments below, what did you think of the game week? Let me know if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll talk to you in a while.